it looks as if Dante from Devil May Cry was being played by Jared Leto in the live-action adaptation. Looks bad.
Uh,
Looks pretty dumb.
When I look out my window, many sights to see. When I look in my window, so many different people to be, that it's strange, so strange. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. You got to pick up every stitch. Oh, must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch. Oh, must be the season of the witch.
Hello there, friend. My human friend, who is a human, and my friend. How are you on this fine evening, / morning, / late or early night? Somewhere in the world, I'm sure.
Well, I'm doing quite well, my fellow human friend.
Yes, we're all humans and friends around here. Friends of the human variety, but also humans of the friend variety.
Oh, yes, certainly. We have that in spades, we do. Friend.
Yes, we're all friends. Okay. I'm trying to think what is the best way to open this, and unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank, which isn't surprising. Also, I think we need not to waste way too much time on our usual shenanigans and introductions. The subject that I have brought today, yes, that's what I meant to say. The subject that I have brought forth for this particular podcast is a lengthy, girthy, and quite frankly, disturbing one. Because of how big it is. There is a lot for me to cover, a lot for me and for us to discuss eventually. We are at the threshold of a deep rabbit hole, except there are no bunny girls in this franchise, so I don't know if I can use that analogy. Maybe cat girl hole would be more appropriate?
I mean, there's a lot of penguins, so maybe penguin hole?
It doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Also, I'm not sure. There will be a lot of gratuitous burying of the lead tonight, for various reasons. But we might as well just rip the band-aid off. This podcast will be about Kemono Friends, the big Animal Girl franchise from 11 years ago at this point. Where to start with this? Let's start from the beginning, from what we in the West have perceived as the beginning of it, and was also the beginning for a lot of long-term fans. The Kemono Friends anime. Devar, do you remember Kemono Friends from back in the day?
I certainly do, because back when the anime was essentially, I would call at its peak, there was a load of fan art, lovingly made by artists. Lots of fan art were made of the many different characters that were within the show's runtime. There was the penguins. There was also Serval, obviously.
She is literally, and also not quite literally, a serval cat, which used to be an endangered species of smaller wild African cat.
I'm trying to remember what her species was, but was it wolf? Basically, it's
Grey wolf?
yeah, there's a grey-looking wolf.
Grey
sort of
wolf!
girl.
I'm sorry, I must say it like Grey Fox. Grey Wolf! Grey Wolf, great character. She's a manga artist. And she
Of
likes
course she
to
is.
she likes to tell spooky stories, completely made up spooky stories on other animal girls to get a fun reaction out of them so that she can use them as reference for the manga that she's drawing.
I will say that is probably the most surface level that most people will probably know Kemono Friends for, and that is the vast amounts of fan art and, of course, the porn.
Well, I mean, I don't think that even warrants a discussion. It's so obvious.
Yes.
This all started, for us at least, this started in 2017 with the arrival of the anime of Kemono Friends. And for better and for worse, depending on who you ask, really, it left quite an impact. I am trying to imagine what kind of face you made when I approached you about a week ago, right? And I asked you, hey, Devar, I have some homework for you.
I was a bit surprised when you said homework, and it just made me curious what it was.
Yes,
And
well,
when you brought,
yes.
and as soon as you brought up Kemono Friends, I had a moment where I raised my eyebrows. That was like a decade old now.
11 years, technically. I mean,
Yeah.
the anime is from 2017, but the franchise at large has existed since at least 2015, so it's technically 10 years old. But I am getting ahead of myself, just as I have gotten ahead of myself when you brought up Grey Wolf and I couldn't resist.
Of course.
Really, that reaction from me should have told you already all you need to know about my feelings for the Kemono Friends franchise. I am surprised as you are. Let's take the shovel and bury the lead for now. We have given too many hints already.
Of course.
So, Kemono Friends, there was an anime in 2017. But before that, there was a mobile game that started in 2015. It was phase one, so to speak, of a larger multimedia project that was started by a producer at Kadokawa, the famous publisher, named Kaji Hitoshi, alongside the manga artist Mine Yoshizaki. Mine Yoshizaki, for those who don't know, is the Sergeant Frog manga artist.
Huh.
He is the creator of Sergeant Frog. He was brought forth into the project to design the characters, to give the franchise its aesthetic identity, at least in the first phase of it. And while I'm not sure how involved Yoshizaki is right now with the franchise, as it is, several artists have had their hand at the Kemono Friends franchise. He was indubitably the starting point, and definitely his artistic influence is still felt to this day in the way these characters are drawn and generally presented. But yes, the Sergeant Frog guy was pretty much at the helm for the Kemono Friends franchise when it comes to the presentation and the visual identity. So, like I said, it was meant to be a big multimedia project, and it started off with a mobile game. More on that later. Let's put a big, inconspicuous pin on this.
Of course.
And before you know it, in 2017, we've had the first anime of Kemono Friends, the eponymous Kemono Friends, which was made to advertise the mobile game and the series at large. So, when I gave you homework, let's go back to that old chestnut. When I told you on this chat, on our chat on Discord, "Hey Devar, I've got homework for you.
Yes.
You have to watch episode 1 from season 1 of Kemono Friends. I did not ask you to watch the whole season, or indeed the whole 2 seasons of it, because there is a second one. More on that later. That's going to be a whole pile of topics later on, let me tell you.
Of course.
I didn't ask you to watch it all out of respect for your time on this miserable earth. So be thankful for that.
Thanks.
So this was mostly to trying to gauge what would be your reaction to it today, several years later after its premiere, because I know what the general reaction to it was from the people who did not care for it, which is most people outside of Japan, sadly.
Of course.
Add that to the pile of topics I have to bring up later. So many pins.
I think you might need a few extra to hold that one up, honestly.
Yes, honestly, I have so many topics that I have already heavily foreshadowed that I'm going to cover in an hour or 2.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how well this goes. Oh gosh.
Yes. So,
but yeah,
I want to hear, what were your impressions of the Kemono Friends anime? Your first impression. Go for it, Devar.
So several points I will make about what my first impressions encompass. First is the general idea that I can recognize it's a very simple show, which is more of a, cutesy comedy sort of thing.
Cough.
Just kind of sells itself as, by the looks of it, with how the show executes what little story it has, and its world, that of Japari Park.
Which, I don't know if you noticed the subtle yet brilliant portmanteau of the name Japari, which is Japan plus Safari.
Yes, I definitely do notice that. And it's not been lost on me. Another thing I basically took note is, because, since I've only watched the first episode and from the first season, so I don't know if the quality is consistently like this.
Yes.
But it's basically 3D looking models with backgrounds that at some points, I swear, don't match up with the characters' movements, depending on what shot they're...
They appear to have mostly digitally painted backgrounds which don't look bad. Occasionally they have 3D assets for the characters to interact with. But for the most part, we have 3D models in what is essentially a digital painting. And it doesn't often look good, but then again, you could say that about the entirety of the show.
So it comes off as a bit on the cheap side at times. Character designs are cute, at least, so that's probably the main thing that you really wanted to have from such a show, to basically have the designs at least be memorable and attract an audience of some description that like their cute character designs.
I will say this. We have already revealed this, but for those who don't know anything about Kemono Friends, Kemono means animal or beast, and friend means tomodachi. I couldn't resist the joke. But anyway, yes, so Kemono Friends is about, animal friends. Or, to be specific, animal girls who are your friends and live in this place, which is called a Japari Park, which, as the name suggests, it's an open-world, big safari park, which is set on an island off the coast of Japan, I do believe, and it's composed of several biomes, each with their own ecosystem and inhabitants, and that's where the show takes place. It's about anthropomorphic animal girls, and generally speaking, they have a very good design. I love the only deadly fatal flaw that these characters have when it comes to their design is that they have given them two sets of ears. They have both their animal ears and their human ears, which I don't like.
Yeah, that's like, do they hear in stereo?
I don't like the Ruby character design, you know?
Yeah, I get that. Believe me, it always kind of niggles me too, that design aspect,
But
depending on what show it is.
But other than that, they are very fun designs. Similarly to how Uma Musume operates,
Yeah.
they found a way to transliterate elements of the animals that they are supposed to embody onto the way they present themselves. The clothes they wear, the tone and pigmentation of the skin occasionally. For example, Serval, the mascot of the entire franchise and the de facto main character too, the main heroine, Serval the Serval Cat, Sonic the Hedgehog character if there ever was one. So she has, of course, her big feline ears, which are typical of the Serval Cat, which is the animal she embodies. It's a spotted feline from the savannah. So she's wearing a cute bow tie and gloves that have spots on them.
Yeah.
And she has a tail and the ears, as I said. A blonde bob cut haircut.
Yeah, bob haircut.
Yes. And it's honestly a very savvy, well-made design. A fun way to reinterpret the physical peculiarity of the animal, the original beast, into the humanized design. And the franchise is chock full of these very inspired decisions. The snake-like friends, and by the way, friends is a capital F friend. It's an actual noun and terminology here.
Yeah,
by the way.
it is.
The snake friends all have hoodies. For example, the King Cobra has a big hoodie, which emulates how the Cobra looks, essentially.
Yeah.
There is a recurring character, the Tsuchinoko, which is supposed to be a reptilian cryptid, because they also have cryptids here. In fact, they also have legendary creatures and deities, which, considering how the world in Kemono Friends is supposed to work, having deities there makes absolutely no sense. But they're there somehow, and that's part of the charm and the mystery of it. Now, I think we have to address the elephant in the room here.
The Kemono elephant?
Yes, there is an Indian elephant, come to think of it. An Indian elephant character. She appears on episode 2, and she's wearing a veil dancer outfit. And the big trunk is reinterpreted as a scarf she's wearing. She looks a bit like Shantae. She's great. That's a great design for an elephant girl.
That's cute.
Anyway, yes, so we have to address the Indian dancing elephant in the room, because the show has a bit of an infamous reputation in that, like we said, it's a 3D show.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look great. At least not at first. It's, shall we say, an acquired taste. I remember what my reaction was. My initial reaction was to Kemono Friends back in 2017 when I first gave it a shot. And I reacted in the same way most people in my position ended up reacting. I couldn't get through the first episode because I couldn't really get over how ugly it looked, or rather, I couldn't get over how wrong and off the animation was.
Yeah, because it kind of has that clashing effect, doesn't it?
That too, but also the 3D models are animated in a very weird and stiff manner. Their movements are so ponderous, so to speak, and the way they interact with both the environment and with each other also feels off. It's clear that this show was on a budget. Also, there are several animation mistakes. and those are just amateur hour mistakes that you can't really not unsee once you notice them.
Yeah.
You didn't come across them because you only saw the first episode, but other than the 3D models looking weird, looking half finished, almost as if they stopped rendering them, it is hard to do it justice, really.
Yeah. Believe me, I had that feeling when I basically saw in the first episode. The background kind of moved as well as the character models at the same time, so it kind of gave off the illusion that the characters were basically moving along with the camera, which looks a bit odd. I don't know how else to describe it, really. It looked less like the characters were interacting with the environment and more the environment was moving on its own with them.
Like I said, there are a lot of moments that feel as if the characters are inhabiting a different plane compared to the environment. Imagine Cloud from Final Fantasy VII running around in that pre-rendered background, right?
Yeah.
Except it looks more wrong here. Probably because this is a show from 2017 and Final Fantasy VII was a game from 1997. That's a good
analogy,
20
yeah.
years apart. There isn't a nice way to put it. Oftentimes, Kemono Friends doesn't look competently animated. It's not just a matter of budget, also a matter of some mistakes and decisions were made, some shortcuts. You mentioned how we have this weird interaction or lack thereof between characters and the environment. Well, let me tell you about that one time in which one of the characters happens to walk over a hole in the ground as if she were Jesus walking on water.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, that was pretty bad. Not as bad as the hippopotamus character coming out of the water in episode 2, except they forgot to put the model there, so you only have the splash of water when she comes out, but not the actual model.
Oh, dear.
The editing is also often, or occasionally, a bit messed up, a bit iffy. It messes with the philological continuity, episode by episode continuity of the show. Here is a clear example. So it's towards the end, the characters find themselves on a boat, which is on water, and they seem to be ready to use the boat. Then they hear a big noise, and the episode very suddenly cuts to the end credits. Just like that. No further context provided for the cliffhanger, just a big noise and then end credits. The beginning of the following episode as the characters somewhere else entirely running towards danger, and it feels as if I have either missed an entire episode or I have started this in the middle of the next episode by accident. What was supposed to have happened is that they left the boat and they ran toward the danger, but that's not how it was presented to me. It was presented as if they were somewhere else entirely and it lacked the tissue to connect the two dots. Yes. So, plenty of accidents like that, and also an animation that overall wasn't particularly competent, wasn't particularly good, had severe limitations to both its budget and the scope of what it could provide visually, and it's especially noticeable when the show, or a not insignificant portion of the show, is supposed to be action-oriented.
Ah, yes, I did neglect to mention that. Even though in the first episode they had a little bit of action, I don't really see it as an action show.
Well, in fairness, they spend most of the episode helping other animal friends solving their own issues on their way to get to the Chapari library and then beyond that. The entire show is basically a big journey or coming-of-age story, which is in itself an excuse to visit the setting and introduce all the fun, loving, and friendly animal girls that inhabit it. And that's
Yeah.
fine. Honestly, after I have already explored as much as I could about the Kemono Friends, the larger Kemono Friends universe, on a second rewatch, I have come to appreciate much, much more what season 1 of the anime had to offer and how charming it is. But on a first watch, I was a lot less lenient. I was a lot more befuddled. The animation, simply put, is extremely distracting for what it is. Either you are able to set it aside and enjoy what the characters are doing and what the story is going to be about, and the surprisingly competent world building that the show has to offer. More on that later. Gosh,
Yeah.
that pile of topics is threatening to fall on me like an avalanche now.
You're just hoarding topics right
Yes,
now.
I'm a hoarder of topics of discussion, as you well know. But anyway, yes, so I had to force myself to stop because I was going to rewatch it in its entirety, and I did not have the time to do so. But I found myself being eager to revisit old friends.
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about what actually happens in that first episode and how it sets up the entire story.
I was just about to say that, actually, but perhaps we should talk about essentially what actually is the setup for all this, essentially.
No, when you say you want to explain what the setup is, do you mean what is presented in the first episode, or...
Yeah, well, it's basically presented in the first episode of what is the story that basically drives the series, essentially.
Okay, then go ahead, King.
So we start off with Serval finding a friend that she is not quite familiar with.
Okay, well, actually, it is vitally important that you mention,
Yeah.
Serval is sleeping atop a tree.
Yeah.
She's very eepy, sleeping atop a tree. Having
Yeah.
a nap, because, serval cats are supposed to be nocturnal. Anyway, that is our first introduction to Serval, and really the first character appearing on screen. Serval the cat, sleeping atop a branch of a tree in the savannah, and she's cute. Okay, proceed.
Yes, and like I said, she finds a friend she's not quite familiar with in species, let's call it that.
Yes.
And
it's quite a
after some...
peculiar looking friend, you see. Doesn't
Yes.
have a tail, no ears. It's carrying some kind of weird oblong thing on its back. What could
Yeah.
it possibly be?
Yeah, and after some hijinks, said friend was trying to run because she thought she was being hunted.
The cat was playing a tag, basically.
Yeah, they then talk to each other and try and figure out what she is. I'm Serval, I'm a Serval cat, sort of thing. Yeah, and even introduces the idea of friends as a...
Not the dictionary definition of friend. Friend as in the in-universe noun that defines animal girls in the world of Kemono friends. How are friends born into this world, Devar? We are getting to it now.
Yeah, after trying to figure out what this friend is, which is essentially goes nowhere, she says that, how about we go to the library to find out what you are, so that we can find out what your name is.
Okay, an important detail that you are accidentally flying over here is that
Yes.
Serval explains that friends, capital F, are born after a specific set of circumstances. You see, initially, we had regular animals that lived in the place.
Yeah.
Then, a weird substance named Sand Star came out of an active volcano, a volcano that erupts every once in a while. When that substance touches one of the animals, it turns them into capital F friends. That is how we have friends in Japari Park. And Serval here speculated that the friend in front of her came to quote-unquote life after the latest eruption, which had just happened recently.
Yeah.
Considering that the friend in front of her has no memory of her past whatsoever, that theory holds some water.
There is one amusing thing where, while trying to figure out her name, she talked about the thing on her back, which, by the way, is a backpack.
Yes.
Which then brings up the word kaban,
Kaban.
which is essentially the Japanese word for that object. So then just basically assumes that's her name.
Okay, so now we have our two main characters, Serval and Kaban, the mysterious question mark friend. What could this friend possibly be? Should we just reveal what this friend is? I mean, it's not really a mystery.
I mean, it's not a mystery at all. She's obviously a human girl.
She does look like a human, and we are assuming that she actually is a human, but Serval here, having lived all her life in this place, and maybe probably never actually met a human before, wouldn't know what a human looks like. Some animals in this park might know what a human is. Definitely the ones manning the library know what a human is. But
Yeah.
she doesn't. So all she can do is help him out in his journey, which is something that she's wont to do. Serval is altruistic like that. She's often described by other friends to be somewhat clumsy, but a good-natured animal, nevertheless. She's always there to help people in need, and she's always been like this. So, of course, she's going to help out the new friend as well.
So that's pretty much your setup, essentially. What drives, essentially, the story for this series, traveling to this library. But we did mention action, in quotation marks.
Okay, before that, there is this whole sequence in which they walk through the savannah, they take breaks, they climb some rocks, climb down some rocks, climb trees. Kaban has an inferiority complex because she can't really do anything like the agile cat can do. But the cat, Serval, is an encouraging and supporting friend, and she tries to, in fact, encourage her to find her own strength. So this is all to set up the fact that Kaban has an advantage compared to most other friends in that she seems to have an innate ingenuity when it comes to resolving crisis. I wonder, where does that ingenuity come from? Maybe it's some kind of ingenuity of the human variety. Also, she knows how to open up boxes. Serval can't even do that. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that they meet a hippopotamus girl who is taking a bath in the watering hole. I would call her a mummy type. Would that be inaccurate? Definitely very maternal towards Serval. Hey Serval, be careful, do not fight the obvious enemy boss ahead. And all that.
Yeah, because it's very dangerous.
So there is danger afoot in this park, and it's not other animals, because there does not appear to be a food chain of any sort here. Generally speaking, every friend here is, well, a friend with each other. They seem to be on good terms. They are just people living their best lives and also retaining some qualities of their previous animal ancestry, I would say, which does not include prey or predator instincts somehow. So they don't eat each other, is what I'm trying to say. They eat a thing called the Japari buns, but that's something that gets revealed later on.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there is in fact a danger in this park, and it's not any of the animals. Introducing the threat known as ceruleans. Well, actually, depending on who's translating, it's either ceruleans or cellians. I'm going to say Celian.
Celians basically look like some sort of abstract shapes, like hexagons or something like that. They're blue and kind of, bright and have an eyeball.
They also have a video game boss weak point.
Yes, they all have a video game weak points, though. They only introduced, in episode 1, they showed the little one and the big one at the end of the episode.
Yes, which... okay, so to make a long story short, it is implied that the big one has eaten somebody, because we hear a scream, but we never really saw the owner of the scream. So the assumption is that they were already eaten. I will expand about what it means to be eaten by a Celian later on. But let me tell you, there are things in this world that might be worse than death. Once again, on a secondary watch, I have appreciated much more what this episode did, not just to introduce and set up the plot, but also to set up the eventual thematic through line of the show. Because if you recall, and I don't really have any reason to believe you would remember that, but the Hippo Girl says to Kaban in no uncertain term that she has to learn to fend for herself in order to survive around here.
I do remember that, yes.
But then the Celian is defeated through a group effort, including the Hippo who came at the last moment to lend a hand or a paw. So what you learn from this is that actually maybe relying on your friends to survive, better idea than to be alone, and definitely makes you stronger. You're stronger with your friends. I don't know if I need to say this out loud, but Kemono Friends is about friendship. It's in the title. So,
there is a... The show might be lightly educational.
Oh,
as far as the animals go, because...
Ever so slightly.
Ever so slightly, just because I remember that one line the Hippo Girl said, where she said that her jaw or something was quite strong, or something. I forgot what the actual line was, but I knew she said something to that effect, that her animal trait, was make it so that she, could not be beaten in a strength of grip.
Animal girls are akin to superhumans, and the animal traits that they have inherited from their ancestry essentially are their superpowers. In a way. But also, yes, this show has a very obvious educational portion. I'm surprised you did not mention the mid-episode breaks, where they featured actual interviews of real-life zoologists and experts commenting on the animals that are featured in each episode. This interview of an expert working at the Osaka Zoo, where they have actually a serval cat on display, espousing the qualities of the animal. And during the interview, which again, it is the mid-episode break, they showcase Serval, as in the character, smoothly inhabiting the photograph of the real-life cage where the serval cat, the animal that is supposed to be. I'm surprised you didn't bring that up.
Considering all the topics you are hinting at we need to cover, I didn't know which one you would want me to bring up of importance.
Every episode features these interviews by experts from all over the world. They, unfortunately, and once again, sometimes the incompetence on display is staggering, the interviews, the English-speaking interviews, they get cut off awkwardly right at the end, as if they were on a Discord server. So that's embarrassing. They don't do that to the Japanese-speaking experts, but the English-speaking experts, they get that. The dub probably fixes this, the English dub, but in the original Japanese, that's an issue. Yet another issue to add into the pile. But nevertheless, I think we've established how charming this show actually is. And
Yes.
honestly, it gets better. From the second episode onward, they have end credits. The first episode, as it is tradition, features the opening sequence at the end of it. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it's not a great looking opening sequence, but the song is a banger, at least.
Yeah. It definitely
Welcome
was back
to
in the
the
day as
Safari
well.
Park. Yes. Very catchy. And also it teases you with all the friends you will meet during the season. You see their shadows, but it's not a very impressive looking opening. What's far more interesting and what's far more thematically resonating is the end credits for this season of Kemono Friends, because it features black and white footage of an abandoned amusement park. This was a choice made by the anime director and head writer, a person that goes by the name of Tatsuki, all in capital letters. To paraphrase what he had to say about this decision, this, referring to the abandoned amusement park, used to be a place full of joy, and now it's all empty. This heavily foreshadows what Kemono Friends is about, or rather, what particular genre of fiction Kemono Friends happens to be. But before I tell you that, so this show, with all the issues that this show had, it was praised for something specific. It was praised for its world building. And I must say, world building is apparently one of the most difficult elements to organically integrate within your narrative. Most shows, most anime really, will make the mistake of dumping exposition on you, interrupting whatever plot progression and forward movement it used to have characters expositing what the world is about. That is the worst way you could possibly do any of that.
Yeah.
Kemono Friends does world building the right way, in that it organically presents elements, visual or otherwise, about the setting, about the world, about the characters who live in it, as the plot progresses, and it does so in a way that does not feel like it's stopping the momentum of the narrative or the journey to have things being explained at you. Here's an example. At the end of episode 1, still talking about episode 1, Kaban and Serval, they go beyond the savannah area. They enter the jungle area, or at least they are on the threshold of entering the jungle area. Like I said, several biomes, several ecosystems here. They meet a peculiar little guy, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
So they meet a tiny little robot, which Serval refers to as Boss, but the robot actually introduces itself as Lucky Beast, which surprises Serval because she has never heard the Boss speak in all her life, and that applies to all the animals here, apparently. But as soon as the robot saw the human, it started to address her, and then it started to act like a guide. It gave some facts about the park, and also it started playing a mysterious tape once it notices that Kaban had a feather on her helmet. You can intuit by what's presented here to you. The robot is clearly programmed to be some kind of guide, and this is a park, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Also, some hints are given as to why its behavior is the way it is. The fact that it's only talking to the human character and not the animals tells you something else as well. And then any and all explanation that's given to you, to the characters, and therefore by proxy to us, feels organic because, again, the little guy is supposed to be a guide in the literal sense. That's how you resolve the issue of explaining what the world is in a way that feels organic. But on top of that, you also have several other background elements, including man-made structures that appear to be in disrepair or unusable, including a funky little cat-themed bus that they spend 2 episodes repairing, which then takes them up a mountain that happens to have a nice, cozy little cafe on the top of it, which is being manned by a cute alpaca who learned how to brew tea by going to the library. The importance of publicly accessible education, kids. That's why libraries are important. And that tells you a hell of a lot more about the world and how these characters have learned not only about themselves, but also how to do things that no one was really here to teach them. They had to learn to write and read, and they learned everything they wanted to learn through the library, if they took the journey to it. Maybe if Serval was a bit more curious about her intellectual pursuits, she would know how to open a goddamn box. You have opposable thumbs, girl.
That's a too high level for her.
But yes, so with all of these clues that the show is giving, it doesn't take long for you to figure out that Kemono Friends is a post-apocalyptic, post-humanity, anthropomorphic fiction, which is a term I coined, if you recall.
I do.
So it is a post-apocalyptic setting. This place used to have humans in it. This place used to have both humans and friends in it. But at some point, due to a unspecified catastrophe, all the humans had to leave. What became of them? No one knows. In fact, this is one of those mysteries that the franchise very wisely never reveals. There are 2 timelines, 2 main timelines in Kemono Friends. There was a time before the cataclysm when the park was active. We had humans and we had friends. And the other continuity is the timeline in the anime. Kaban and Serval and Hippopotamus and Crested Ibis and Alpaca and Tsuchinoko and Grey Wolf! You know?
The best one.
and Campo Flicker, whom in season 1 she is the concierge at a lodge where Grey Wolf and Giraffe are staying. And in season 2 she's a real estate agent. Helping friends to find dens, as it were. Interestingly enough, the mobile game, which I mentioned, which is the first thing that came out, was set in the first timeline. It introduced the park as it used to be. And it introduced one of the central figures of the entire franchise, which is a human woman by the name of Mirai. Mirai means future, in case this was too subtle. And Mirai is the original park guide. I am basically spoiling this to you. This is not something that gets fully addressed in the anime. This is something that gets expanded upon in supplemental material and in video games, which you can't really play, so I might as well tell you. The plot of the first game was about the first timeline with Mirai, and also Serval happens to be there, curiously enough, and also everyone else happens to be already there, curiously enough, and they are already fighting against the Celians, which were already a threat back in the day. In fact, they came about from the same place where the Sandstar comes from, which is the volcano, which is concerning in many ways.
Yes, somewhat.
Anyway, so they're dealing with the Celian crisis in that timeline, and things happen and whatnot. And then Kemono Friends, the anime starts, which might as well be a new beginning for the entire franchise.
Yeah.
And this takes place sometimes after that. I don't know. Nobody knows whether the humans are gone, or they have simply abandoned the place because they had no choice. That is one of those mysteries that are never revealed, and I think it's best that they don't get revealed. They leave room for imagination and interpretation. We don't need to learn about every single piece of lore about the world. It's more interesting if some mystery is left. What's important is how and what we do with the story and the setting and the characters presented to us. And I think Season 1 does a decent job in introducing all of that. And also setting up what might become eventually the true emotional catharsis and through line of the series when I will discuss the sequel.
Yeah.
Several things are implied, or rather, several things are left to the imagination. What's the deal with the friends? Are they the same friends as they were in the original timeline? But if that's the case, why they don't remember anything? That's suspicious. Are they
somewhat
other friends? Are they the same friends? There are several theories about it. I do not care about speculating on that too much. I'm mostly interested in what are the psychological and emotional consequences of that old chestnut, specifically as it pertains the threat of the Salients. Let me tell you about the Salients a little bit more here. I will not tell you exactly what their deal is. Their deal is different depending on the timeline, apparently.
And here I thought you said it's yet another thing shrouded in mystery.
They give explanations as to how they work, but that explanation is slightly different depending on the piece of media. And when I say the piece of media, I'm referring also to Season 1 and Season 2 of the anime, which were made by different studios, by the way.
Oh no.
Yes, and they also changed directors in the second season. The second season is basically simultaneously a soft reboot, but also a sequel. Wants to have its cake and eat it too. The director for that season claims that they can be watched at any order. That's a stupid lie. But that creates its own share of problems, but also leads us to what I think is the most interesting use of salients as a concept. Because the salients don't just assume abstract forms and shapes. They tend to imitate the shapes of things, and sometimes animals and people. They imitate the shape, and that becomes the shape that informs them. So in Season 2, there are plenty of salients that look like vehicles and objects and whatnot. In the original mobile game, one of the salient assumes the shape of Serval, and then she gains her own sentience and free will and becomes one of the friends. I mean, first game in the series already going with the bold Sonic Adventure 2 direction, skipping Sonic Adventure 1. Okay. Different explanations as to what the salients are, but what the salients can do has mostly stayed the same, at least in the second timeline. The salients feast upon the friends. They consume the Sand Star, and when that happens, the friends revert back to their original animal form. And the consequence of that is that they completely lose the memories, the self, the identity that they have established for themselves. They lose it all. They go back being animals. They don't have a connection anymore to the world.
Wow.
And the memories of their loved ones are gone, allegedly. It is also said, during this season and during the next one, it is also said that it is possible for an animal, for the same animal even, to become a friend again when the Sand Star touches it again. But when that happens, they don't regain their lost memories. They get a second shot at friend life, hashtag friend life, but they are essentially a blank slate.
Ah.
Allegedly. So, the implications are dire here, because this is implied to have happened to most, if not all, the friends in Japari Park. Maybe with the exception of the librarians. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention this. The ones at the Japari library are 2 owl girls. They are a professor and an assistant. And they know pretty much everything, yet they cannot follow a recipe to cook, and they were waiting for somebody who could read recipes so that they can cook for them. It's very funny. This paints quite a different picture to what the setting and the world and the thematic through line of Kemono Friends as a whole is, because on a surface level, it is a joyful, cheerful show about friendship, coming together, fighting against adversities, loving each other, supporting each other, and also some Yuri here and there.
Of course.
More in the supplemental materials, but it's definitely something that they lean towards in the supplemental material. But also, there is an undercurrent of tragedy and melancholy. And that is something that I was waiting, hoping that the show, the anime, would eventually explore. The anime never really does anything with this information. Never really explores it, never really bothers with it. Season 2 is an incredible disappointment for several reasons. It looks nicer, I suppose, but it does do a disservice to what was established there in Season 1, and it does do a disservice to itself because it squanders all of its potential. And there was a lot of it to squander. However, the reason why I'm even here bothering to tell you about this is because I actually witnessed the heights in which this series could be taken with the themes that it presents here. And it's not to be found in the anime, it's not to be found in Season 2 of the anime, it's to be found, get this, in the manga adaptation of Season 2.
Manga adaptation.
I'm going to put yet another pin here because we need to round up the discussion on Season 1.
Right.
You're not planning to watch the rest of Season 1, are you?
Not really, no.
Okay, then I will spoil what the twist is with Kaban. It turns out that Serval's initial assessment was 100% correct. Kaban is a human friend. I can hear the gears, the mechanisms in your brain trying to process this information, trying to figure out how this might possibly work. So,
well, more like, what does it change?
Okay, it's important for reasons, but let me explain here. Back in the day, scientists were wrapping their head around as to why and how the Sand Star does and works the way it does. They couldn't really figure it out. But through scientific research, they were at least able to figure out that it reacts to organic matter. Anything from real-life creatures to corpses to fossils, anything containing organic matter touched by the Sand Star may become a friend. I'm not sure how cryptids or gods figure into this, but let's go with that. So, remember when I mentioned the character of Mirai?
Yes.
Which was the original park guide. She was also the mysterious voice recorded within Lucky Beast. She left records, holographic records as well, about her time at the park during the end. And also, Serval happened to be there. And current timeline Serval reacts to that by shedding tears, even though she doesn't quite understand why that's making her cry. I wonder. Okay, so what happens is that Mirai was leaving her final message before leaving the island. And then she was on top of a Ferris wheel. Hey, remember the abandoned amusement park in the end credits? That was
Yeah.
relevant in more ways than one, not just thematically. Also, there is an amusement park here. It's all coming together. So while on top of the amusement park, her explorer's helmet with feathers on top of it happened to be blown away by a gust of wind. Cut to however much time later, there is an eruption of sandstar. One of the sandstar particles hit the hat, and inside the hat happened to be a strand of hair. And that's where Kaban is born. Kaban is the clone daughter of Mirai. The magical clone daughter of Mirai. And somehow, she retains subconsciously a lot of her practical knowledge, which I am assuming is how she's able to come up with solutions to help animals. And then she ends up following basically in her footsteps in season 2. So that's something.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that
To keep in mind.
that basically kind of then brings up the idea that the subconscious knowledge can be treated like instinct to her then.
I'm actually speculating about why Kaban is able to do the things that she does. I'm also basing this theory on what is presented again in the Kemono Friends 2 manga adaptation, which expands a lot more on what is the baseline of that very season and tragic consequences, the loss of memory and identity when you are taken by the Celian or Ceruleans.
Yeah.
And there is a proper emotional catharsis and through line to that, even though it leaves several plot threads still open. But I'm fine, because what I do get is a lot more satisfying than a straight-up explanation.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get there at some point. But before I forget, I just want to say that Season 1 is... Kemono Friends 1, Season 1 specifically, is... It's a lot better on a second rewatch. And by second rewatch, as I've implied, I meant after I have learned everything I wanted to learn about it and I became fully submerged into this universe. When something awful happened to me and I started to care and I started to feel affection towards these fictional characters. When I see Crested Ibis on screen trying to sing, being terrible at it because that's the peculiarity of the animal, I mark out because she's great and I love her and she deserves the world. When I think about American Beaver and Prairie Dog living together in that wooden cottage that they built for themselves, my heart grows 3 sizes over. When I think of the Penguin Idol group, and now we have to talk about the Penguin Idol group. We have to talk about the Penguin Idol group. There is a Penguin Idol group. Rule 63, Madagascar penguins, but they're idols. You have to think about that for a minute.
I mean, it's uniform.
So yes, there is a idol penguin group, and apparently they've always been there, both timelines, and they're also here. They are implied to be 5th generation or something, so they might not be the same, but they're there right now, and they sing, and they dance, and they do singing and dancing for an audience, and their manager is a margay, which is a type of also feline like the ocelot and serval, and she's a massive otaku fangirl. And in the original timeline, Margay was a film director. All these characters have something going on for themselves: personality quirks, hobbies, habitual places of living. There is a hot spring in the snowy mountain, a onsen, which is manned by Hezo Red Fox and Silver Fox, and the Red Fox is a gamer girl. whatever misgivings I used to have about the quality of the animation, the quality of the show overall, some errors here and there was charm to it. The characters are charming and their dynamics are cute. And simply put, I love the idea of spending time with them again. So hence why I feel that Season 1 of Kemono Friends is a lot better than 2017 me would have bothered to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, there is a really funny joke in the onsen hot spring episode. So there is a hot spring, and by the way, onsen is a hot springs inn.
Yeah.
I know you know Devar, but
I mean the audience, I know.
The audience that we will hopefully have, because I'm sure we will attract all the millions of Kemono Friends fans here in the West with this one podcast about it. Anyway, there is a really funny joke in the Hot Springs episode. All the girls, as in Kaban and Serval and the two foxes, and also a capybara that happens to be there already, because of course there is a capybara in a hot spring.
Yeah, just chilling.
Chilling. They all have a bath in the hot spring. They did not take off their clothes. So I was rolling my eyes thinking, okay, they couldn't be bothered to animate them without the clothes. That would have taken too much effort somehow. But then they had a talk with Kaban, who was experiencing some kind of innate embarrassment while trying to remove her clothes. And at some point, all the girls, all the friends simultaneously realize, wait a minute, these come off? They have never realized that they were wearing clothes. They have never realized that they could simply take them off. They thought it was their skin, their coats, so they never took off their coats. This is a really funny joke. It's funny on multiple levels, because it is also the show making fun of itself for having budget animation, and that means not much in terms of variety when it comes to the character models, but it's really funny here in context and out of context. It's actually a very funny joke. Okay, Kemono Friends, you got me here. You've got me here. Good job. Modest clapping.
Oh, the sillies.
So yes, and I suppose on that high note I can successfully conclude my thoughts on Kemono Friends 1. It's fine. It's not perfect. I wouldn't even dare to say that it is good, but it has a charm to it. And it's carried a lot by the innate potential of the kind of story it could tell, rather than the story that it actually told, which was fairly basic, all things considered. The world building is more interesting than the baseline text, but as I said, it's all potential, and this is a good introduction to the universe overall. Let me remove one of the pins, one of the many pins I have here. I mentioned how this multimedia franchise started with a mobile game, followed by the anime. The mobile game was developed by Nexon and came out in March 2015. It was a gacha game, and it was a turn-based RPG, too.
Right.
The anime came out in 2017. 2 months prior the release of the anime, in December of 2016, barely a year and a few months since its initial release on March 2015, the game shut down.
Wow, the timing.
The game shut down, again, 2 months prior to the release of the anime that was supposed to advertise it. That's unfortunate. That is how Kemono Friends starts as a franchise with a big failure, followed by an unsuspecting, unexpected runaway success. Because while the mobile games shut down very quickly, following the fate of a lot of mobile games who failed to find an audience immediately, actually, come to think of it, considering how quickly mobile games get to be shut down nowadays, this one might as well have lasted a decade. But anyway, the anime was a smash hit. In Japan, I think the asterisk is necessary. In the West, it was poorly received. Some people were really mean to it. Some people were overly critical. Some people, like me, were not able to watch more than half of it, of the first episode of it, before quitting it. In the West, Kemono Friends never really took root as a franchise because of that. But in Japan, fans were apparently much more lenient to the limitations and the budget thereof, because the show was surprisingly very well received and also did exceptionally well in the ratings, as in shockingly well in the ratings. I'm talking about an average of 9 million views, beating that year's season of Attack on Titan.
Wow.
That's how good it did. I was really surprised to learn that. The entirety of Kemono Friends as an entity, as a franchise, was built on the back of Kemono Friends Season 1, and then it exploded in popularity all at once, again, in Japan and in China, not where we live, unfortunately. I am just realizing how all over the place this podcast is, but we are going to come back to this particular discussion about the larger Kemono Friends universe, but it is important to establish how fundamental Kemono Friends Season 1 was to the lifeblood, the very legacy of this franchise. It's what it allowed it to become the actual multimedia mega franchise that it dreamed to be.
Yeah.
With an anime that looks like a HD remaster of a PlayStation 1 video game cutscene with the anti-aliasing all the way up.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the most apt description, but that's the one my brain landed on. It's incredible that it did as well as it did. Which is why, before going any further into this discussion about Kemono Friends 2, about the manga and the anime, it's important to keep this in mind because Kemono Friends 2 actually flopped pretty hard.
Ooh.
If the first season made a lot of fans, the second season pissed off a lot of those same fans. And I have technically already explained why that was the case. Pretty sure that if I were a fan of the story and the characters in Kemono Friends 1, I would have expected Season 2 to pick up where the first season has left off and continue the story from there. But what it ended up doing is that it introduced a new human character, and also it reintroduced another character that was there in the first game, but now it's also here inexplicably, by the name of Caracal, as in the Caracal cat, which is a sort of African lynx. And by the way, she's great, okay? In this house, we love and respect Caracal, but specifically the manga version, because the anime version and really every character in the anime version are as flat as a board. The entire decoupage of Season 2 is nothing but unresolved issues, discarded plot points that were heavily foreshadowed, and flat narrative, story beats, and characters, slightly better animation, but that's about it. change of direction, change of studio, change of vision, an attempt to do simultaneously a soft reboot and a sequel. Hence why I am not interested in talking about the anime, but I so desperately want to gush about the manga. Because the manga takes everything that the anime did wrong and fixed it, tweaked it, rewrote entire scenes, added several elements, and provided emotional catharsis left and right for all the characters, especially for Serval and Kaban, which, yes, is still a character in Season 2, even though she's not the human main character anymore. And actually, the new human child is a good protagonist. I like them very, very much. And my gosh, the manga gives us a proper dynamic between them and Caracal, which was only hinted in the anime, but here it's meatier, it has depth, and it is informed by a shared trauma. Imagine that!
Wow.
Oh my gosh, there is so much going on, not enough time to talk about it. I'm actually choosing this point to take a break from talking about Kemono Friends, and I want to pass the ball to Devar because he also has his own topic to discuss, and I desperately need to make my vocal cords rest a little bit.
Of course.
Mr. Human Friend, would you like to bring forth your topic of discussion?
I would like to. Now, I only gave you one clue what is the game I want to talk about, and that is when you called me human friend, when you would say, see you later, human friend, I said to you, see you as well, fellow drifter. And if anyone is watching this video, then perhaps a small percent of you might have actually reacted to this title of Drifter, which I will say right now is a term used in this world's universe as essentially mercenary for hire. And where does this come from? Why, the Wild Arms series, of course.
I saw that coming.
Yes. So a couple of months ago, I was made aware that the PlayStation Store was selling the Wild Arms series, and number 4 was the latest one they added to it, which is considered the black sheep of the entire series.
You know, that's actually pretty funny because I played Wild Arms 3, which I also purchased from the PlayStation Store back in the day.
Yeah.
I never finished it, though.
I'll get to 3 at some point, but right now I need to start from the beginning on when I decided to do this. Because since it was the latest addition to the PlayStation Store, there was a particular YouTuber by the name of David Vink, who is an RPG reviewer. So he's basically covered a lot of RPGs ranging from the NES to the Super Nintendo, even to modern RPGs, even though he constantly says he's an old man these days. I mean, the guy, you could fool me, my friend. You look like you're in your 30s still. Or even 20s. Jeez. Anyway, and I quote that he said that this Wild Arms 4 was considered the black sheep to the series, but he thinks it's underrated for the fact that it has the very interesting hex battle system compared to the rest of the series, which before that, which was just a typical turn-based RPG.
Hey, Devar, quick question before you continue. Would you mind explaining what in the world is Wild Arms? I don't think you explained that.
Not yet, but I was about to. Because I'm basically trying to go through the process here of what I've heard first before what I've actually experienced.
So you're burying the lead.
Yes. So essentially, because of this, this has basically made me decide, to actually give Wild Arms 4 essentially a chance, even though it's going to be my first Wild Arms game in the series. But for some strange reason, in my mind, starting with the Black Sheep might, I basically thought in my head, perhaps this might get me to try the rest of the series and to appreciate it in a very strange order, so to speak. See basically from its worst to its best, essentially, if you get what my meaning is there.
Okay.
And a lot of people say that the first two are usually the best in the franchise. Some people say 3 is pretty damn good, but if you
I don't agree.
But a lot of people say the first two are the best of the franchise. Now, why I call it a franchise and not a series is because, let me take you down a little bit of history. It has been 19 years or 20 years, depending on how you want to look at it, since a mainline Wild Arms game was released. And the last actual mainline title was Wild Arms 5 on the PS2. Meanwhile, there was a spin-off title that was released for the PSP. So depending on which game you're thinking of, it's been gone for that long. However, there was a mobile game back in 2017 or 2018, I believe, which was shut down in 2022.
This is becoming an unexpected theme for tonight's podcast.
Yes. And so, depending on how you see it, oh, by the way, this mobile game was Japan only.
Of course.
And the mobile game was essentially typical gacha system, get the heroes from previous mainline titles in your party to take on battles and such with. That's pretty much what I end up looking up when I decided to check out the history of the game, because I've always been partially interested, and it's technically been an RPG regret I have not played back on the PS1, the Wild Arms 1 and 2. So heading actually into the fact I actually bought Wild Arms 4 just to see what all the hubbub and how bad could it be, and would I agree with the majority of the fan base? Or is it because people were just feeling kind of betrayed because they tried to rejig the formula and try a lot of new things? So a bit of foundation here for Wild Arms 4, but Wild Arms 4 was released, by the way, I will be using the Japanese release date for this one. It was released back in 2005 on the PlayStation 2. So I want you to keep that in mind, the year that came out. We've had other RPGs that has basically taken the genre forward in some ways, or have been influential to a lot of people's minds when it comes to the genre. So Wild Arms as a series, now I can actually get into it. For the most part, 1 through 3 was a typical turn-based affair, and this was the kind of like the first, let's say, betrayal that most of the fans basically bring up as being essentially why they say it's the Black Sheep, because they tried something new in this RPG called the Hex system. And the system has the potential to be strategically a very interesting system, because typically in turn-based affairs, you usually, whenever you cast a spell, you either pick a single target or all target, depending on what system you're using, right? Well,
yes.
in this case, rather than picking the party member, your heal spell is actually targeting the hex that your party member or members are inhabiting. So your heal spell is actually taking effect on the area that your characters are localized in.
I think I am familiar with that particular system. I've seen it in several video games. So there is basically a big circle and area effective, not character effective, and the same applies to enemies.
Yes.
Right?
It's pretty much done in that way. And like I said, it has the potential to be interesting for strategy purposes, from the way it sounds and in theory. It's just, I'm not sure if I'm not seeing it or utilizing it properly to its full potential, but I tend to have trouble trying to figure out the balance of, do I keep my party members together so I can heal them easier, as a group, or do I separate and make sure that the enemy doesn't nuke my party? Because then it's like a balancing act I can't seem to get down, and that's not even covering essentially the bosses who have really annoying gimmicks that feel like they drag out battles rather than have anything meaningful about it. Like one boss I fought just recently who used essentially a constant summoning of an orb that would take damage in her place and would keep summoning it one turn after it got taken out. Feels like it drags on the fight rather than being interesting in any way. So yeah, those are some of the drawbacks I have noticed when using the system and trying to figure out what is the best way of handling it. Also, this is the system that some people say is underrated, while others, which is the majority of the fan base, says is far too different. I should probably go.
So it's interesting because this is the starting point for you. You have not played any previous games, but now you're starting off with the black sheep of the franchise, which has this system that most fans don't like, and you are trying to form your own opinion about it, which is uncolored by previous experience.
Exactly. Which I thought would be the interesting way of getting into the series.
But no, it's just bad. Okay.
Wow, way to bury me like that. Here I am trying to give this a chance, man. Anyway, so let me think about my thought process here. Because, may I remind you, I decided to jump into this to see how I would feel about the system without being colored by previous entries of the series, and even to see, essentially, the series at its quote-unquote worst.
I mean, there was a mobile game, so I don't know about this being the worst.
Let's not get into that. The mobile game's not important right now.
Well, that's funny, because on my end, the mobile game is everything. When we get back to Kemono Friends, oh, so help me.
Yeah. So, speaking of, I would like to talk about the stories that they set up with. No spoilers or anything, just especially since I've only gotten through essentially the first, let's say, 8 hours of the game right now, so I've not even gotten to what would be considered the halfway point, unless this is criminally short, which would be very unusual for a PS2 game.
It has to be at least 60 hours for a PlayStation 2 game.
In Wild Arms 4, the game starts you off with the 14-year-old boy by the name of Jude, who is living a nice quiet life in the village with his single mom.
You don't say!
And all the villagers who raised him, so he sees them as guardians or father figures or uncle figures some way.
Okay, when do they die?
I've not found that answer yet either, actually.
Really? Okay, that's different. That's new.
Okay.
Refreshing, even.
So while Jude's having this normal day, he's going about his business as he usually would. He's deciding to go out and about, enjoy his life, maybe even fit in some sword practice, or skip it, depending on his flight of fancy. And suddenly, a ship crashes through the sky and breaks it like glass, and lands in a clearing nearby.
That sounds like the beginning of a Star Ocean game already.
He then sees essentially military people talking about things he doesn't quite understand. He sees a situation go down he doesn't quite get the ins and outs of, but he's assuming that certain people might be evil and others might be good guys, essentially, in this scuffle.
Okay.
Especially when he hears that there's a girl who has been kept hostage or prisoner.
Wait a minute.
And he goes to this prison and he finds her. And he promises her that he will find a way to get her out. They can escape back to his village.
Hey, Devar, are you a fan of Hayao Miyazaki's adaptation of Future Boy Conan? And alternatively, Castle in the Sky?
I cannot say I've seen either of those.
Get to it then!
So after some shenanigans, saving her, as well as another party member who joins you, we're cut to the chase. The village gets attacked and people are hurt, and Jude takes this as an insult to his honor. He's not happy that his mom is being threatened, and from one shenanigan to another, he ends up gaining the powers of a weapon known as an arms, which is a futuristic looking gun.
Okay, so to clarify, it is called an arms plural, even though it's a singular weapon.
Yes.
I hate this. This is driving me off a cliff. I'm having flashbacks about Wild Arms 3 now. Gosh.
I am very sorry. Because he's a 14-year-old boy that suddenly has access to a super powerful weapon that he has no control over,
Hate when that happens.
He ends up destroying a very important part to the village, which makes the facility that he's in fall from the sky. We're calling this a facility because that is what it is, in my opinion, even though it's painted as a village and everyone was living peacefully there. He ends up going to the escape pod with two new party members, who I will name now as Arnold and Yuli. Quick summary of their characterizations here at this point, I think. Actually, no, I'll save that for later when we introduce the fourth party member. They go into the escape pods, and while Mom basically promises that she'll find him and catch up with him, and everyone else basically goes to their own escape pods, only for Jude and his two other party members to find themselves out at sea, and Jude finds himself in a world that considers alien to him, and not like the peaceful village that he came from. And that is pretty much your setup for the story of where it goes from there. They quickly realize that the government is after Yuli specifically, because she has a power that's very specific to her. And of course, Jude wants to learn all about what not only her power is, but his own power. And also because he wants to keep a promise to her, because he promised he would protect her. So the story essentially is them going around the world, trying to figure out what the whole deal of this world is, what their powers are about, and why the government wants it, but also avoiding the government while they're at it, too. I'm going to assume that the Wild Arms series has themes and concepts.
I am going to tell you what Wild Arms 3 specifically had.
Yeah.
One of its random enemy encounters was a floating physical copy of a Trigun manga. I'm pretty sure that low-quality JPEG was originally a Trigun manga that they reworked to make it look not like a copyright infringement. But that definitely looked to me like the cover art, low-quality cover art of a Trigun manga by Yasuhiro Naitao. Do you think Wild Arms has inspirations of some kind?
No, you don't say. I mean, Wild Arms 4 takes place specifically in a post-apocalyptic world with Wild West themes. While
You don't say. Maybe is it another planet too?
I mean, it's on a planet called Filgaia. I'm going to assume that that's a name reused across the series, and as far as I know, each Wild Arms games does not interact with the other. So unless I get corrected by comments or from actual fans, as far as I know, Wild Arms 1, 2, 3, and 4 don't really interact with each other. So I'm going to assume that's your experience as well with Wild Arms 3.
Like I said, Wild Arms 3 was my only game in the series. I am emphatically uninterested in exploring this franchise at the moment. But then again, 2 weeks ago, I never in my wildest dreams would have anticipated that Kemono friends would become my hyperfixation. And yet, here we are.
I should probably go over some of the character dynamics because, spoiler alert, in this game specifically, the character dynamics are very paper thin.
I can attest to the fact that characters were very flat in Wild Arms 3 in general. I don't know if it's an issue with the entire series, but I am not especially impressed by anything in that game.
Yeah.
Well, it had a few cool combat sequences, turn-based combat sequences, while riding horses, I guess.
Yeah.
That was nice, I think.
The first character, Jude, who I've mentioned already, 14-year-old boy, he's pretty much your naive boy who has been locked away from the real horrors of the world, of the outside world, and but yet is still like this go-getter who says, and I quote, giving up means not moving forward, and moving forward is the best option.
People die if they're killed.
Yes. The second male protagonist is called Arnaud, probably the most amusing of the cast. His dialogue is utterly ridiculous. Since he's a guy who isn't strong in his opinion, and he's your mage of the game, he basically says everything from the neck up is his best quality. He prides his brain over everything else.
I thought he was calling himself beautiful.
Oh no, no, definitely not. Then you have Yuli, who is your party's healer and priestess, and that's all she is. She's your nice girl.
You know, I just realized that on top of all the references and on top of all the premises from stories and other games that this is pulling from, that this is reminding me, you can probably add any type of lunar game as well.
And then we have the fourth character, who I've not mentioned yet, called Raquel, who is the second of the female protagonists. And let's not mince words, the developers, the story writers have the OTPs all set up now, lined up. Okay. We have romance stories already set up now with these two pairs.
Obviously, the main guy and the mage get together, right?
I don't think you want to say that. I mean, Jude's 14 and Arnaud is like 16, 18 plus, something like that.
I mean, still teenagers.
Oh.
But, yes. Okay, but I see your point, okay.
Yeah, Raquel, she's introduced as your badass swordswoman with a giant sword, wears a long coat and everything.
Okay, of course, you have to pair her with the soft boy wizard. Makes sense.
Yes. And she is slightly interesting in the fact she says she's a wanderer who is traveling the world in order to see and find beauty in the world still.
And she found the mage boy. Clearly, that's the end of her quest.
Oh, she's annoyed with him at first. Anyway.
Of course.
So, because, since Arnaud is the realist man who is, who thinks he's the grown-up in the situation and is telling everybody like, no, you can't do that. That's too idealist sort of thing. You have to be a realist. Really think with your brain here. So this is our party dynamic, essentially.
Your party dynamic is Inuyasha, basically. The smarminess really seeping through the screen.
Yeah. So the character writing is sadly as paper thin, even though they have some of interesting ideas here with the form of badass swordswoman is actually, a painter that likes beautiful things or wants to see beautiful things again, because this is where we get to the elephant in the room, or rather, the giant war cannon in the room.
Oh, I was actually getting excited there for a moment. I thought Indian Elephant Chan entered the chat.
If she's got a big giant cannon of war, then yes.
Well, she does have a big scarf.
One of the bigger themes that these characters are dealing with, which is really ham-fisted, like, hey, do you see what the theme is of the story is? Sort of mentality the story is going with, is the idea of a post-apocalypse. Humans are trying to survive by any means necessary after two big, strong world governments had a massive war that ruined the world and no one was able to fix it. Everybody left.
I couldn't have possibly planned this better, but it's surprising how much thematic contiguity we have between Kemono Friends and this.
I know, right? It's so strange.
Strange indeed. To make it abundantly clear to our listeners, I did not know I was about to talk about Wild Arms 4 before this podcast. It was a surprise, you see.
Yes, it was. I kept it a secret just to basically surprise him to see if he's played it or not. But obviously he's not.
Well, you were close.
I was one title off.
One number off, as it's often the case.
So, this is the thing with this game that I find very interesting, but yet very, very perplexing to me. The writing and the characterization tells me, a light-hearted, feel-good adventure story. We're traveling the world. We're basically sticking it to the adults that don't know any better. And yet it's also dealing with the idea of what happens to a world where two superpowers decide they're going to beat the crap out of each other for power and leave the world in ruin with no one to rule it in the end.
So you're experiencing a bit of a tonal backlash between what is the general presentation, the general textual experience of the game versus the themes it wants to tackle. And I understand that. I have recently written about a game titled Hassle Battle Card Gamers, which, if you play the uncensored version, by the way, it is Yu-Gi-Oh! As in deck building, card game shenanigans and hijinks.
Yeah.
But it is also about underage child prostitution and human trafficking.
Yes.
So, the way I described it, imagine if Maximilian Pegasus were mentioned in the Epstein files. And that should tell you about the kind of tonal whiplash I experienced with that. Also, it's porn.
Yeah. So the way I'm going to describe this to you is what I described to a few people in a server I frequent. Wild Arms 4, the way it tells its story and the way it executes everything, as imagine if this was an anime released in the late 90s or 2000s, got translated, was advertised to English-speaking audience as a Saturday morning kids cartoon show, which had no business talking about the horrors of war and ruin of a world.
This reminds me almost to a T the kind of advertising kerfuffle that Steam Boy by Katsuhiro Otomo went through. But it was more in the opposite direction. in that case.
I just find it so funny. It treats lightheartedly, but yet it's covering all these heavy themes. And with dialogue like where Arnold has a crisis of courage, because in his view, he's not strong, he's only got his brain. And Raquel replies to him with, "You have more than just your brain. You have your heart." And it's like, and I'm like,
I mean,
thinking,
there is admittedly a time and place for everything, even for the no doubt scrumptious cheesecake that is such a basic battle shonen dialogue choice. But maybe again, we need to find a way to reconcile that with the fact that this is a story about the world being destroyed by powerful idiots in power, and we are left to deal with the consequences of the disaster. That seems oddly relevant, I would say. To the point, in fact, that we are way past the cautionary aspect and knee-deep into, oh, we're just going through it now.
I know, right? It's just, like I said, it's just that I cannot basically reconcile with the two separate things. We have heavy themes, but yet light-hearted execution going on here, and it's very distracting with cheesy dialogue on top of it. I don't know if that's because of, translations back in 2006.
Well, if you think about it, several RPGs had that exact issue. In fact, I would argue that even the general quality of the dialogues in a game like Final Fantasy VII would often run into the wall of tonal lack of cohesion. Not to the degree that some other video games would, like one example you're bringing here to the table, but it's definitely a trend when it comes to localizing RPGs from Japan, especially in the days of Final Fantasy VI. The dialogues come off as a bit cheesier or maybe a bit more flat and simplistic, and they don't really carry over the gravitas necessary to convey the urgency of the situation and the themes that the story wishes to explore. I think, again, going back to Kemono Friends, it's interesting because Kemono Friends is tonally consistently happy-go-lucky, except for a few serious moments of introspection, because most of the really dark elements are subtextual, implied more than openly addressed, which leaves room for interpretation and imagination, as well as allows it to not compromise its general tone and presentation. It's the competent version of having its cake and eating it too. When it works. It does not work all the time.
I will go over some things I do enjoy about the game, other than the potential of the combat system, which can essentially make or break depending on what encounter you have. Exploration-wise, on the field map of any dungeon or area you're exploring is fully 3D environment that you can platform jump around, and so it has exploration down. It has also certain screens, though, where it goes side view, so you can only go left and right, but that's for specific screens. It saves that for. They do have puzzle elements as well in dungeons, but that's layered with other mechanics like slowing down time, for example. So then you have ample time to get across a platform that's falling faster than it should, for example. Or the idea of hitting levers with certain things, or throwing items that are given to you in order to hit a lever somewhere else is another example.
I don't like the puzzles in these games. Have I mentioned that?
I said I enjoy them, not love them.
It's no Golden Sun, is it?
No. And I do like the setup for the villains for the antagonists of the story is that they're also essentially a set of people that have a different idea of how they want to try and fix the world, essentially, but it might come at morally ambiguous circumstances. Though you are challenging me to sympathize with one guy who is voiced by Cam Clark. And he's playing a character that is designed to look like an edgelord character.
Okay.
Who claims to be a vampire.
Wait, what?
That's a thing that the story just casually drops on you one point.
Okay.
That one of the villains, who is a lieutenant of the government, is a vampire. And,
wow.
And for some reason, he's voiced by Cam Clark, who is doing his usual Cam Clark voice. And by the way, if you don't know who Cam Clark is, then watch the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where he plays Leonardo. Or, better yet, watch any Golden film he stars in, where he uses the same voice.
Or play Grandia 2.
Yes.
He was the main character in that game. Interesting casting decision.
And that was just after I heard his voice as a random enemy, where he goes, "You would hit a gob," and I'm like perplexed. I did not expect to hear his voice after hearing his voice in multiple Golden films,
Okay.
animated movies.
Okay, well, you need to stop watching Phalus videos, by the way. I know you're not actually watching Golden films.
I mean, I did watch a couple just out of curiosity. Anyway, so perplexing. But I mean, another perplexing thing is I would like to share, at least before I consider this over. I recently fought a boss who is having monologues with the main character about the nature of surviving in a cruel world and what do you fight for, sort of deal. And,
gosh.
and Jude answers like, "I fight to protect my friends," and is like, "And I try to protect my love, but you killed him. How dare you?" And so how's that any different from what I'm doing, she says.
I don't know. So, I have a better fashion sense.
So imagine this. She's having this monologue debate with the main character. And also, she has the power to create essentially her own pocket dimensions and destroy them if she so wills it. And yet she's not the final boss. She's only the second person that you fight of the lieutenants. How can you top this woman?
You want her to top you, obviously.
It's absolutely insane. How does the game expect to top this? I've not even gotten far in this game, and that's what I recently left off with. This was so perplexing. I felt it was necessary to share this with you.
Okay.
Regardless.
You are making sure that I will never touch a Wild Arms game ever again. Thank you for reinforcing my worldview. That's what friends are for.
Or in Jude's case, friends are there to protect each other.
Okay, it's Dutch Bell. I mean, even Kemono Friends isn't that brazen about friendship, and it's literally named the Kemono Friends.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have a soft spot for Wild Arms 4 right now, but it does come at the caveat of being dangerously close to being a deal breaker at some point, because it has a lot of interesting ideas. Some I've already specified I liked, especially Raquel, who is a beast in combat, my add. And obviously I just find the post-mortem of this game more interesting than the game itself, of how the heck does it decide to just casually have heavy themes and yet treat it like a light-hearted adventure, like any other RPG story would. It's quirky. I'll give it that. It has its charm, and I'm still enjoying it for what it's worth. And considering that I got it for under £15 in British money, it'd probably be 11, I think, actually. But I actually forgot the price. But if I bought this full price back in when it was released at £40, I probably wouldn't be as kind as I am to it, or lenient rather.
That makes sense.
But this is where I kind of want to bring up another thing. It's a very small thing, and that is the nature of I bought this digitally.
We're having that conversation now.
I'll try and keep this brief as much as possible. But considering Sony's stance, by the way, you shouldn't listen to them. They are misleading liars, and they are fixing the numbers to make you see propaganda. They're using chatbots and people they paid off to give off the illusion that physical is not popular, and yet they want to take you onto a future where they can casually delete your game and you cannot have a say about it.
Recently there was a kerfuffle with the Sony servers in which they shut down for a while and people were not able to access to their games. Just so you know, just so you know what the future looks like. A week later that happened to Microsoft as well.
And it was much worse with Microsoft because some of their physical games require online checks.
Yikes!
So that's even...
okay, well, it's one thing if they build their own servers, but they are borrowing from Amazon.
Exactly. If you're interested in making sure not only physical media is protected, but also your digital games are also protected so that you can say you actually own it, then I suggest fighting Sony on this, whether you agree stopping of physical media or not, because actually owning your games is way better than not at all. And also, just so you know, there is going to be an event on the August 23rd called the PS Blackout. So if you're interested, do not switch your console on till the 30th of August.
I haven't touched my PlayStation 4 in a month, actually. And before that, I haven't touched it in a year. So it's not going to be an issue for me. Easiest boycott in the world, really.
Yeah. But anyway, I just thought I should do my due diligence on that one. I could go into more detail, but I think I do not want to preach to you. I want you to know those are the key points you should keep in mind if you really value owning the games that you want to keep forever, essentially.
It's astounding how much philological continuity we have between our subjects of discussion. Even with regards of the threat of forever losing, not just the games you own, but entire pieces of history and media, because they're all in the hands of companies, even beyond the current state of video games as an industry. Mobile games have had that issue since the beginning. There are a lot of games that start and then get shut down constantly because they fail to find an audience, or maybe they do have an audience and they last a few years, but they all at some point inevitably get erased because they don't have all the audience that they could have, all the money that they could be making. And this is funny because it's going to be another big, fat, disgusting pin I have to add to the pile when I will go back to discuss Kemono Friends.
Of course.
But before that, I want to go back to Kemono Friends 2. That is to say, the manga adaptation of Season 2.
Of course.
Because this is where what I would consider the real emotional and thematic through line of the entire franchise happens in this one manga, illustrated and written by one Ryu Naito. You would think that the Sergeant Frog guy would work at a Kemono Friends manga, but no, that's not the case at all, actually. Nevertheless, here's what I find really good and fascinating and effectively just the best version of itself about Kemono Friends 2. This goes back to what I've already established about the Salients, what they do to friends when they get them. And that existential dread becomes the baseline impetus for the story and also the individual arcs of the characters and their intertwined dynamics. This is something that the manga implies has happened to Serval, maybe on multiple occasions, and Caracal was there to witness it, which is why she develops a sort of abandonment issue when the human child traveling with them may eventually leave them when they find their home, which is the whole point of the journey. They want to help the child to find their home. And the whole point of the child's own arc is to figure out that home is where your friends are, which is nothing new, but it's very well executed. It all goes back to that idea, the importance of the connections you make, the importance of having loved ones in your life, becoming a core portion of your identity, and the absolute horror of losing that due to trauma, of which the Salian are a metaphor. This all really comes together beautifully in the relationship between Serval and the returning Kaban. In this story, Kaban has gotten a little bit older. She is an adult woman now. She looks more similar to Mirai, and she has basically taken over her work doing research with the two owl girls, the professor and the assistant. They moved on to their own Pokemon Center. I mean, seriously, the building looks like a Pokemon Center. In fact, to be perfectly honest, at this point in her life, Kaban looks like a Pokemon professor. She's great. So what's established at the very beginning of Kemono Friends 2 is that Serval appears to have forgotten about Kaban. For reasons that we can only speculate, she has a vague memory of having an adventure with another human friend. And that was her. She has forgotten about that, or rather, the memories appear to have been suppressed deep within her subconscious, only to eventually come out in the forms of episodes, triggered by things that are being said, people that she meets, manifesting in the form of trembling and even tears coming down of her eyes. And it's sad because she doesn't seem to understand why she's feeling that way. The body remembers, even if the mind does not. And to make this even more sad, Kaban does remember her. Kaban remembers. Serval does not have access to the surface memories, only the subconscious repression eventually, occasionally, lets up. And so this is the through line at the core of Kemono Friends. It's friendship, or rather, it's connections. It's
bonds and connection.
Bonds and connections, being close to somebody, and the idea that you might lose track of a loved one for events and reasons outside of your control, a trauma. From what it is shown to us, all the friends, even if they lose themselves, even if they get eaten by the Salian, and then they might come back as new versions of themselves after the Sandstar touches them again, but they don't retain the memories of their past life. That is said implicitly, but also they don't really change as people at a fundamental level. The core values of what they are, the building blocks of who they are still there. They are still the same people personality-wise. What's been taken from them is specifically the connections and the memories of the people that were in their life. And this is the true tragedy of Kemono Friends, losing your friends. And in the specific case of Serval and Kaban here, their story isn't necessarily one of reconciliation. Serval never really recovers those lost memories, but rather it becomes a story about two people who loved each other, found each other again, but the nature of the relationship will be different from this moment onward. And they get a form of closure, of emotional closure, by dealing with the Sellian that is the literal embodiment of those lost feelings. Because, that's how Kemono Friends handles its metaphors.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. Every character is very well rounded. Every dynamic is well thought out. I became invested in these characters and their individual journeys as it pertains to the theming. Which, again, it was all potential, raw potential laid out in the foundational blocks of the entire franchise, and especially Season 2, that initially failed to truly come together for whatever reason. The manga was able to take that potential and actually do something meaningful with it. What we do have is a story set in the Kemono Friends universe that resonates with the grander thematic impetus of Kemono Friends as a whole, in that it is about the importance of friendship. It is about friendship, but it's coming at it from a place of introspection. What it means to make connections, what it means to lose them, and how much they are an integral part of the person you are, even if you don't remember them. Those memories hidden in your subconscious, they become the building blocks of the person you are, or the person Serval is, specifically. That's the silver lining. That's how much of a core part of you it becomes. The same could be said about the trauma, really. The trauma that took away everything from you. But also, the trauma will not be the obstacle that doesn't let you be happy with your new life. And really, Serval is a shockingly tragic heroine, but also a inspirational one. Because in every and all version of Kemono Friends, regardless if it's the old timeline, the new timeline, regardless if she's the original Serval or some other version that came afterwards, she's always the same person. She's always driven by the desire of helping others and putting her body on the line, even if she doesn't remember her origins. She has lost and found her identity and forged new connections every time she lost the old ones. So yes, that's Kemono Friends 2. Surprisingly heavy in parts. There is this chapter about a puppy girl, by the way, we have a domestic dog friend, who lives in an abandoned urban center, waiting for humans to come back. And then we have this whole chapter of her playing with both the human child and Caracal and Serval. A frisbee is launched and then caught with her mouth. There's a scene where Serval rubs her stomach, which is cute. They all huddle together and sleep in a big bed, which is also very cute. And that is the moment in which the child realizes that home actually feels like this warmth, being together with the people that you care about. And he's on the verge of realizing what that means. And the puppy girl herself also has her own arc in which she realizes that instead of waiting for humans to come back, she should go out there and make new friends with all the other friends. Which is the exact opposite of what the anime does. No, in the anime she goes back being alone in the village waiting for humans. Which is not great. It is sad, but not appropriately framed as such. Yet another reason why the anime is so flat.
I was going to ask as well, would you say that the whole bonds and connections thing could be multi-layered in the fact of, as well, that in the idea of humans and their connection and bonds with nature and animals? Do you think it could be seen that way?
Well, there is definitely something there, because the idea of Japari Park, how Japari Park originally came to be, wasn't a consequence of the initial incident that led to the friends being born. It's the other way around. Japari Park was already there. They brought a bunch of endangered species for the purpose of preservation. Japari Park was born out of the genuine love that humans have for animals. Mirai, the park guide, is a big animal pervert freak. She really loves her animals, and when they all turn to girls, she gets even creepier about it. But nevertheless,
There's passion there.
yeah, there's passion there. The point is, in fact, connections. Humans loving animals, friends loving other friends. The entire impetus behind the Kemono Friends being born as a franchise was that the people who worked on everything that's Kemono Friends related love animals, love endangered species specifically. This is arguably one of the most well-informed and educational franchises about zoology. They are as passionate about it as the Umamusume people are passionate about horse racing. Of course, the entirety of Kemono Friends is about the importance of loving something or someone, and the fear that that something or someone that you love may be taken away from you at any point in time. There is a metatextual aspect to that, obviously, because that's an actual danger that the franchise was undergoing when that first mobile game didn't do so well. But then the anime gave us all hope, so the anime became about hope, and here we are. Now, I will say this.
Yeah.
There are still issues with Kemono Friends 2, the manga, in that it's 17 chapters long, and I think it needed a couple of more chapters to properly let everyone have their hard-earned epilogue, let it breathe. They had to rush the ending, and the final climax, much like the anime, is a bit uninspired, I think. Also a bit confusing. It does a much better job in foreshadowing what happens in it, but I still wish it was something different, fundamentally different from what the anime did, and also some elements that are only ever introduced in this manga are never really brought up in any other Kemono Friends media ever, which is confusing. And also they don't receive a proper conclusive explanation or satisfactory explanation for what they represent, unless you happen to read an entry on the Japari Library website, which is the fandom's own wiki, which attests that an explanation is given for what any of the unexplained portions of Season 2 mean in some kind of Kemono Friends themed exhibit that happened at some point. And I am not sure how any of this is credible in any way whatsoever, so I'm choosing not to address it.
Right.
That's it, basically, for Kemono Friends 2. There is a lot of supplementary material, and that's what took most of my time in this past week. There are other official manga adaptations, such as this slice of life prequel set in the days where the park was open and there was peace, which is titled Welcome to Japari Park, which stars Serval, whom is paired with Hezo Red Fox, and they get a new caretaker to look after them. This manga is very cute, but it's also interesting for world-building purposes, because it expands upon certain aspects of lived-in life in the park, back in the day when it was a park, that no other media addresses. How do animals interact with humans on a regular basis? And it turns out that a good chunk of them work as mascots at Disneyland, basically. And they all moved to a urban center. And they are pursuing a higher education, I believe, or it is implied that they do. But that meant that the people who were once hired as animal handlers for the open zoo, now they had to upgrade themselves to become caretakers, guardians, or even teachers, which is also fun to think about. There are still animals who choose to live in the wild in their own territories. They prefer it that way. Serval in particular is very social and loves children. Red Fox is antisocial and a glutton for meat buns. A bit of a troublemaker, but very cute. There is a lot to enjoy in this manga as well. Another manga that I am currently in the process of reading is an anthology comic titled A la carte, a series of shorts by individual artists that they get the freedom to write about their favorite character dynamics. If you want to see how, for example, Lion and Moose would interact with Brown Bear and have a hot-blooded cooking contest, you get your wish granted. Also, if you wanted to see more Yuri, well, let me tell you, there isn't anything explicit or, well, openly established, but both Welcome to Japari Park and some of the anthology stories do lean heavily on Yuri. There is this fun, intimate dynamic between Hazel Red Fox and her assigned caretaker, Nana. Obviously, most fans must love Kaban and Serval, which makes sense. Especially after Kemono Friends 2, I think that portion of the relationship, wistful melancholy, stolen glances, that's a lot more interesting to me than the childlike friendly version of that in Season 1. But they are cute regardless. There is so much to enjoy about Kemono Friends. Of course, there's merchandise. You know?
Merchandise!
There was a pachinko machine at some point. Of course there was.
Of course.
There was an alarm clock app. I'm just speed running for a few examples here. Music albums, stage plays. Like I said, very popular in Japan and China. So many stage plays, music albums, a pachinko machine, alarm clock app. I discovered there are official Kemono Friends VTubers.
I'm not surprised for some reason.
VTubers, and Caracal is one of them. There is one English-speaking VTuber amongst this group, which is a coyote. Unfortunately, she graduated last year. But fun fact, right before beginning this podcast, I was in the middle of watching one of her VODs. I'm going to say this. We have a coyote girl in Kemono Friends. We also have a Roadrunner girl. And they do nothing with this notion. They squandered it entirely. I'm so mad. They must have been afraid of pissing off Warner Bros. Such a wasted opportunity. I hope somebody makes a doujinshi about that at least. The gag writes itself. I mean, there was an episode in Season 2 where Cheetah and Pronghorn have a race. You could have done that with Roadrunner and the Coyote. And there is a Roadrunner there too, but not a Coyote. And I'm... Oh. But now...
the Yuri version of that.
But now it's finally time. Finally time to address the biggest pin of them all.
Oh, yeah, there's that big pin there.
Yes. So now, let's talk about the video game output of Kemono Friends. We've already mentioned what fate befell the original Kemono Friends. The game developed by Nexon, gacha, mobile game, ran from March 2015 until December 2016, died 2 months before the anime. Now, the next game to come out was Kemono Friends Pavilion, which was developed or maybe published by Bushiroad and developed by Moshimo and Unique Wave. Pavilion was, I believe, an observation game. Basically, you would tune in to watch your favorite animal girls in their natural habitat. Now, this game began in January of 2018 and then was shut down in June 2021.
Yeah.
So it lasted a little bit longer than Kemono Friends. The next game to come out, also in 2018, developed by FumpleStream, is a match-free puzzle game titled Kemono Friends Puzzle Puzzle Goko. This was the first title in the series to receive an English translation. Since this is not a gacha game, I think this one can still be played. Next up is Kemono Friends Festival, another RPG, developed by Gudroid, released in June 2018, also the same year. It was shut down in October of 2024.
So there's a theme going on here.
I think there's a bit of a theme here. Yes, I am starting to be worried. I don't know about you. Next, we had Kemono Friends Pie-Cross. That's right, Pie-Cross.
That sounds wholesome. I'm not going to get shut down.
No, it doesn't get shut down because this is a first and only console release, available exclusively on Nintendo Switch, and also the only other official Kemono Friends game to receive an English translation. This was developed by Jupiter, which is the company who built the Pie-Cross Empire, and it's owned by Nintendo.
Huh.
This also came out in October of 2018. Many games released the same year, I noticed.
Yeah.
Maybe too many games in the same year. I think somebody was a bit hasty about this. Next up, we have Kemono Friends Free. That's right, there is a Kemono Friends Free. It's not an anime, it's a gacha game. This one was developed by Sega, and it started in September of 2019, and it's still running to this day.
Oh, whew.
I think this is the one. This one has been successful and it's staying up. Unfortunately, it is only in Japanese or in simplified Chinese, and on top of that, it's region locked. So being able to play this game would require a few insane and convoluted hoops.
Yeah.
But it is possible, and the wiki website, Japari Library, explains how to do it. So if you are ever interested in this, and if you can read the Japanese or Chinese, or maybe you want to still try it even if you can't understand the language, and you do it while following closely the guide that the website provides, well, you can play it with extreme difficulties, but you can.
Yeah.
Simultaneously to Kemono Friends Free, we've had an arcade cabinet, Planet Tours, also released in September of 2019. This one had a feature in which you could print physical cards and you could use them to restore your own save data in the same cabinet when you come back to play on it. That's something that Sega patented, I believe. Yes, and last, but certainly not least, we have Kemono Friends Kingdom by Zhlon Game. This is a Chinese video game set in an alternative universe that's entirely non-canonical to the current one. Now, this game actually had a worldwide release. This can be played in English. This can be played in your local regions. Or at least that's what I would be saying. This was the last one to ever come out in May of 2022, and it shut down in May of 2026, this very year. I missed my window of opportunity, my friend.
I cannot. I can feel that regret right now.
I mean, I think it would have been worse if I could actually play it, and then I could never play it anymore.
Yeah.
So this is quite a dire picture. You wouldn't believe how successful this franchise was based on how unsuccessful so many of its attempts at gacha mobile games were. It's almost as if releasing so many of them the same year, months apart from each other, was not the best or brightest idea from a business standpoint. But at this point in time, Kemono Friends was too unstoppable of a franchise to be, well, stopped, for lack of a better term. Its history is mired by one gigantic, huge runaway success and several smaller failures that never really put a dent in its popularity. It's still going strong to this day. Again, in Japan and in China, in the Asian regions, not where we live, and honestly, I'm sad because now I care about it. I didn't care about it 10 years ago, but now here we are. Here we are at last, at the end of our journey. This has been a very, very succinct, very abridged coverage of this whole series. I do not have the time to go in detail about all of this, especially since I no longer have access to half of the material that has come out in the past few years. All of these cancelled video games, they live on in screenshots and video game footage on YouTube. So if you're ever curious of what they were about, you can probably find their digital legacy. But you can never play them yourself. Well, thank the animal gods you can play Picross. Kemono Friends freaking Picross!
I mean, only the most exciting of games, right?
At least we have Uma Musume.
Yeah, at least we have horse girls.
At least we have horse girls. And I guess on that bittersweet note, that's where we shall leave you. Because I think my throat is about to give up. And in about a minute, I'm going to sound like Crested Ibis when she sings.
Of course.
Actually, I almost forgot. There is another supplementary piece of media from Kemono Friends that I think is necessary for completion. And that is Welcome to Japari Park. And that is the ONA Welcome to Japari Park. Not to be confused with the manga of the same name. They are completely different. They have nothing to do with each other because the ONA is a summary, a recap, a retelling of the plot of the first game. So if you ever want to experience what the first game had for itself, narrative-wise, this series, which is comprised of a bunch of 4 or 5 minutes long episodes, is your only option to experience it. If you ever wanted to meet the Cerebral Celian clone, that's how you can do that.
That's the only way you can experience that.
Unless you find a way to play Kemono Friends free, because I'm sure she's there too.
Yes, and if you went back in time, or had the power to time travel.
I just made myself really sad now, because the Cerebral Clone Girl, which goes by the name of Selbal, she's very cute. She's not in the second timeline. So I can only assume what might have happened to her. And that makes me so sad. Let's wrap this up. I am being Madhog, I've been your host, and I'm accompanied by Devar. Listen to my song. Apologies.
Hi, I'm right here. I'm Devar.
Okay, well, good night, everybody. And remember, in this house, we stand Caracal. I'll fight you. I'll scratch you. I'll bite you. I'll chase you. I won't eat you, but I'll chase you playfully. And maybe I'll tackle you, and then we will have an awkward moment. And you will regret it for the rest of your day.
It'll be awkward forever. It will never stop. Good
night, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Meow. Okay, Devar just showed to me how that Cam Clark voiced character from Wild Arms 4 looks like. I think we needed to share this with the class. Look at this freaking guy. He looks... Okay, you said it's an edgelord. To me, it looks as if Dante from Devil May Cry was being played by Jared Leto in the live-action adaptation. Looks bad. Looks pretty dumb.
Again, like I said, it looks like a wannabe edgelord. I just don't know. I just thought it was so funny to share because... Oh, by the way, his name's Scythe. Just to basically lay it on thick how much of an edgelord this character is.
Yes, I don't like this guy. I don't trust this guy.
Can you imagine this guy with this design sounding like Yes, I'm going to partake in this, in your blood.
You know, actually, before we go, I'm glad I started recording again because I forgot to mention something very important here.
What was the important thing?
The whole reason why I started this retrospective, this full immersion in the Kemono Friends franchise, was because of a fan-made video game by the title of Kemono Friends Celian May Cry, which is on Steam, along with another fan-made video game, which is a visual novel titled Opening Day, which is based off the Welcome to Japari Park manga continuity. Hence, my very alarming post from Blue Sky that I shared here on chat. What is this? Definitely not me playing a fan-made Kemono Friends visual novel based on an official Kemono Friends spin-off manga set before Season 1 of the anime, but after both the original mobile game by Nexon and Kemono Friends Free, I don't have a hyperfixation.
Oh, no. This is just a passing glance, isn't it, for you?
But actually, I am blessed that Celian May Cry is in my life because, let me tell you, it's a solid video game. A solid, well-made, complete video game. And it's not, and unlike what the title suggests, it's not a clone of Devil May Cry, as much as it is a character action interpretation of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. And it's very good. It is somewhat janky in parts, and the enemy AI is relentless and difficult to stagger, which is why you have to engage with the mechanic of bringing your own summoned friends into the mazes and basically mob everything you see with them. It's a very fun, well-made video game. And also that's the reason why I'm choosing to say Celian instead of Cerulean. So that's, so that we can have a bit of synergy here. I also wanted to take this opportunity to mention about one particular doujinshi, one self-published fanfiction manga, which is a very fun or very peculiar crossover, because Serval teams up with Solid Snake. Well, actually, it's technically Snake from Metal Gear Solid 3, which would become Big Boss, which is even better because that's the camo wearing snake that eats animals.
Yes.
So it's kind of perfect for a crossover with Kemono Friends. So I thought that was fun to address. Like I said,
it's amusing.
like I said, there is so much to this franchise, not including the fun works. But the fun works are funny, and they were definitely worth acknowledging. And here I am, acknowledging them. And now, I will sign off, and maybe hyper fixate on something else for a change.
We shall see.
Well, okay then. Bye.
Take care.